the impactful advocate, inspiring igniter, powerful economic partner, and regional collaborator. My name is Emily Reynolds, and I'm the Executive Director of Government Affairs for the Hampton Roads Chamber. I'm very fortunate to be here today with our Vice Chair of Government Affairs, Angie Bezick. Angie is President and CEO of Principal Advantage, which is a SWAM certified government affairs and public relations firm. So thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So we're going to go over some of the General Assembly information, a lot of the bills that the Chamber was watching. And Angie and I had a very busy couple of months, that's for sure, to say the least. Yeah, exactly. So just going to go over some key dates and kind of talk about some of the legislation that we saw. The 2021 regular General Assembly session, they convened on January 13th. They adjourned sine die after 30 days, and Governor Northam signed a proclamation calling the members of the General Assembly into the special session, which convened on February 10th to align the legislative calendar with the customary 46-day length for the odd numbered years. The special session actually just wrapped up this past month, and so we adjourned sine die on March 1st of this month. Angie, if you want to go into just a little bit of detail on the 30-day versus the 46-day, being that this was the first time in so many years for both houses not voting unanimously to extend the session.
Right. So the Constitution calls in the odd years for a 30-day legislative session, and traditionally they have the parties have both bodies have agreed to extend that to a 46-day session. And this time, the Republicans thought after a 60-day session in 20 plus 84-day special session, and then everybody just running into the new year and heading into the regular session for 21, that 30 days should do it, that they had so much legislation and really just needed to look at how things play out. So ultimately, the bills that had not passed by the time they adjourned sine die on February 8th were communicated to the special session on the 10th so that they could continue to do the work.
Sure. So we can't stress enough, I think, that this is an odd session for sure, operating in a virtual manner with the committees and subcommittees, and then also with the bill limit of 7 bills per member for the House and then 12 bills per member for the Senate. So again, let's chat about the legislation and get down to the important stuff. So in your opinion, what is the number one bill that came out of the General Assembly that benefits the business community?
I think hands down it would be the one that came down to the wire, which was the conformity with federal administration, the federal government, on the PPP money that people received. Originally it was to be a loan, and then you could have loan forgiveness. And then they said that you wouldn't have to, the feds said that you wouldn't have to claim it as income, and you could deduct the money that you spent from it for the expenses of your business, which is to keep your folks employed. And so the state, at the state level, they had not yet done that. And the House and the Senate had some different ideas on what that might be, but ultimately, in a very beneficial way for our businesses, they are able to deduct up to $100,000 of the expenses that are the loan versus expenses that they incurred as a part of their business. And it was signed, I believe, by the governor on the 15th because there was an emergency clause. And so there you are.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That one was very, very important to our business community. And I know that we definitely had a lot of influence on that as well,
Yes.
with being able to work with the conferees on this particular piece of legislation.
Yes, you did a really fine job on that.
I appreciate that.
I liked getting the updates as the blow by blow continued
Well,
into the last minutes.
That's why we chose her to be on here. No, just kidding. But thank you, I appreciate that. So are there any other specific bills of interest to the business community that we looked at? I know that through some of the updates that I'll be giving to the boards, I'll be going through the list, but is there anything, other than the tax conformity legislation?
So there have been a number of bills as introduced that were pretty awful. And the business community was able to work together in collaboration to level some of that out so that the businesses weren't taking big hits. I think that Delegate Hudson had one with regard to unemployment insurance, House Bill 2040. And it's about repayment by folks who have collected and received overpayments. And so initially it was very broad. And the people who received overpayments didn't have a lot of requirement for payback within her bill as introduced. But in the end, they were able to give a little more structure around it, even though it's still somewhat broad. But I guess the bottom line for our employers across the state is that they will not be paying into that unemployment fund as a part of the tax that they pay for their employees for unemployment. It will come from the general fund. It'll still be your tax dollars, but not a direct hit on the businesses as they try to work their way through that. And so that's probably about as good as we could get with the atmosphere.
I couldn't agree more on that particular bill, that's for sure.
It was striking to me, though, there's language in there, and I'm just going to read it. It shall be contrary to equity and good conscience if requiring repayment of an overpayment would deprive the individual of the income required to provide for basic necessities, including shelter, food, medicine, childcare, and any other essential living expenses. And that's part of what I mean by it being broad.
Sure.
I don't know that there is a definition to equity and good conscience.
Exactly.
And what is any other essential living expense. So, somewhat amorphous.
Sure.
Just sort of things that Emily and the folks she collaborates with during the General Assembly session, they try to address during the session with the patrons and the committee members. So.
Exactly. But like you were saying, and just to reiterate, I think it's so important that a lot of the bills as they were introduced would have been very harmful to business. There were many of them that did not pass, and those of which that did pass were amended or had a substitute to them. So, and this is one of those bills that we definitely felt was amended. Rather than coming from that trust fund, coming from the general fund, it's going to be a little bit more friendly to the business community.
And Delegate Guzman patroned House Bill 2137, which was paid sick leave. It was very broad, included essential, 13 classes of essential personnel as introduced. In the end, it came down to home health care. Still some things, 20 hours per week or 90 per month, rollover of the previous year's leftover sick leave to the next year, up to 40 hours. And there's some interesting language in there as well. Any other individual related by blood or affinity whose close association with an employee is the equivalent of a family relationship. So that is in there as a qualifier for being able to receive this sick pay. While much better than as introduced, still something for our employers to watch out for and make sure that they stay on point, because we don't want anyone getting in trouble. So
sure, to look down
Yes.
the road, sure. And then I'll just add another one that we were looking at as well was, and this was House Bill 1902, and this was the polystyrene ban.
Great, polystyrene war.
Yeah. So anyway, so that one was one that we worked with the Virginia Restaurant Lodging Association on that one to be able to ensure that the business community was heard, specifically for a lot of the restaurants that have had to adapt due to COVID and banning polystyrene, which is styrofoam, which many restaurants do not use it, but for those that do, this was something that we definitely weighed in on that one as well. So I will kind of go through to the next one, and I will just say I wanted to highlight some other bills that could have been harmful to business, and I had a list of those, and it's right to work, Green New Deal Act, mandatory hazard pay, moratorium on fossil fuel projects, mandatory paid family and medical leave program. So again, these were a lot that failed, but we'll probably see them again in the future. But definitely would have been harmful to business. But we'll take a win where we can. So looking forward to the future, what are the key issues that you think will come before the General Assembly and the new administration?
So for a few years now, Senator Barker and Senator Mason have each patroned bills that would allow associations such as the Chamber to be able to have a benefit to their members of health insurance. And so that, in varying degrees and levels, has been vetoed and just didn't make it. This year, Senator Barker cut way back and made it just for the Realtors Association. And once again, that bill failed. So I imagine with the new administration coming in, and of course, we have a little ways to go before we know who that is, but the outreach to those folks continues, and hopefully we can keep them on point with allowing health insurance to be a part of a benefit you receive for your membership with your chamber or whatever association you happen to be a part of.
Absolutely.
So I expect to see that back.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit disappointing was there was a pitch about budget language with regard to the gap, the Interstate 64 between, I think, exit 205 and 237, basically the end of Hampton Roads and where you get to Richmond.
Sure.
And it had sort of been pitched as this is $93.1 million that will go towards that build out. And in reality,
we read the fine
right,
print.
the fine print is that it will actually go to the hot lanes that are being constructed. And should there be anything left over, and with CTV approval, those leftover funds could possibly go to the gap. Of course, Emily and I have confirmed that there will be no leftover money, and probably hot lanes will need more. So, our folks here in Hampton Roads and the folks in Richmond definitely need to keep pushing, and I'm sure we'll continue to find patrons for that.
Absolutely. Well, I know that we're running lower on some time, so I would love to have you back so that we can talk about the election moving forward, being that we have a hot topic coming up before us in November.
Yeah.
For the elections, for the House of Delegates, and then also for the executive branch. So definitely look forward to that one. But thank you so much again for being with us. Definitely appreciate all that you do and your support for the Chamber. And I have to say to our members, it's a true honor to be able to advocate on behalf of you all, and just know that we're doing the good work up at the General Assembly session. So thank you so much for your support as well.